Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening in some cases, and welcome to today's ACGC session. My name is Karen Athanasio. I'm new to the ACGC community, having joined a little over a month ago as the Senior Manager, Member Relations and Partnerships, and it's a real pleasure to be part of this community, and I'm very much looking forward to getting to know everybody better.
My name is Ocansey. I am the Head of Diversity and Inclusion and a corporate finance lawyer at BNP Paribus, and I'm really pleased to be with you here today. But firstly, I want to sort of discuss ESG, environmental, social and governance. It's one of the most important areas of the 21st century. We are all familiar with its evolution and progress. So this area is ever evolving and ever prevalent. However, we're all aware of the risk as well and the challenges facing ESG. Flooding, global warming, climate change, the accusations of greenwashing, the human rights violations, and the ever-mounting litigation. And so the question is, members of the continent and lawyers, we are there to support our clients in order to grow and thrive their businesses. But the reality is that as lawyers, we're also taught to manage risk, mitigation, litigation, and various challenges and see the bigger picture. So the question that we have to consider today is ESG a legal liability or a strategic opportunity? And in order to sort of explore this further and try and resolve these two competing factors, I'd like to welcome our panelists to present their cases. Let's start with the economic case for ESG.
Excellent, fine. Well, in which case what I'll do, I'll just share my screen and I'll put up my presentation and let's have a look at this. Yeah, so what I'd like to do is start off by talking about what is the economic factors which are out there, what are the economic impacts of ESG, particularly in the African context, but also what are investor and regulator expectations. Things are changing. As you know, we're talking about ESG on trial at the moment. There's been a bit of a backlash against it, particularly led by the Trump administration and other parts of the world. But there's also been a counter Greenlash, if you like, particularly in the EU, doubling down and saying we're not giving up on this. So we really need to understand what the economic context of this is. And I think the important thing to understand when we look at ESG is that in the old days, everyone always sort of kind of separated it out. You had the environment, you had society, you had the economies, and they kind of crossed over a bit like a Venn diagram. But that's not really how it works. The reality is that the economies are embedded within society, which is embedded within the environment. That makes logical sense. There is no economic activity if there is no human society. So what is driving all of this? Particularly when we talk about ESG, we mean sustainable finance. The first thing more than anything is regulation. This graph here shows the number of regulations there are out there about ESG issues from major regulators around the world. You can see around 2000 it started to rise. That's when we first got the Millennium Development Goals. But from 2015, with the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, the Paris Accord, a lot of things that have come since then, it's absolutely skyrocketed. So the reality is compliance. That's one of the big issues which is driving sustainable finance and its importance.
Ties in quite nicely with Adeola, who's going to sort of explore the whole challenges of governance further.
And I want to talk about the risk of poor governance of ESG. Because when ESG is managed reactively, what happens is that it exposes companies to lawsuits, cancelled contracts. It could even lead to reputational damage and stakeholder revolt. But when it is stewarded with legal foresight, ESG is a strategic asset. In my work across multiple African countries, what I've seen is that sometimes our legal teams are blindsided by what seems to be harmless ESG claims. A few sentences in a sustainability report, because more and more we're seeing that regulators are requiring companies to now also give sustainability reports. And sometimes what seems harmless because you didn't look over it as legal, you just compiled everything, posted it on the website, included it in your annual reports. Those little claims can now, and even sometimes even a photo op, can now trigger activists' outreach and even regulator queries. So at the center of all of this, what we're seeing is the social license to operate. That social license to operate is an intangible and continuous permission granted by the public. It's not something that is issued by a regulator, but it is earned. It is earned through trust, transparency, and governance. If you lose your social license to operate, you don't just lose goodwill, you lose revenue, you could lose talent, investors, and sometimes even the ability to operate, because we're finding that more and more people are now able to call out companies and to call out boycotts for companies. In Africa, where formal ESG enforcement is still catching up, our social license has now become the first regulator, and sometimes it starts online. And that's why African companies must not simply follow ESG global rules, we must lead in defining them. African companies, governments, legal practitioners must shape ESG frameworks that reflect our realities, our history, and our priorities.